The cost of rent continues to soar right across the country.
Tonight, painting a picture of what it takes to pay for a place to live. Good evening. There is a small sliver of optimism for people in Toronto who pay month to month to put a roof over their heads.
The rate of increasing rent is slowing slightly, but still remains among the highest in Canada. CTV's Natalie Johnson has tonight's top story.
In a city where rent can feel sky high,
they don't bring it down.
$1,000 a month, right? A tiny room, no closet.
Many Torontonians say the hikes just keep coming.
I was previously renting a condo, so I actually left because the price was increasing.
But the latest numbers show a glimmer of hope. A Rentals.ca report revealing that last month, Toronto rents decreased compared to a year ago. A year-over-year decline of 0.8% to an average of just over $2,900, the first annual decrease since August 2021. Canada-wide, the annual rate of rent growth was 9.9% in October, down from the 11.1% annual pace in September.
We need to focus on supply.
Today, the federal government announced that it will provide the city low-interest loans of $1.2 billion to help build more than 2,600 rental homes.
We are focusing on new purpose-built rental and on affordable rental housing, and we really are putting our money where our mouth is.
But the need is greater than that. Just last week, City Council passed a plan to build 65,000 rent-controlled homes by 2030. Meeting that target would require up to $800 million every year from Ottawa, who has yet to commit.
We have over 85,000 households waiting for these kind of deeply affordable housing. So I am awaiting with really, I have faith, I have hope.
Many Torontonians say it can't come soon enough.
Paying the rent, but it's too much for me.
I'm sorry, but there has to be a time where there's a critical point where people will just not be able to get into the market.
The federal government delivers its fall economic statement next week. Toronto hoping for more housing help.
Natalie Johnson, CTV News.
For so many families, it's not just the cost of rent hitting hard.
Paying for food and other groceries becoming increasingly difficult. It's why the number of people relying on food banks is also soaring. CTV's Mike Walker has details of a new report released today.
Volunteers are busier than ever sorting donations at the Daily Bread Food Bank amid unprecedented demand.
It's really helped our autonomy and our dignity, because prior to coming to the food bank, I would have to go to family and friends and neighbors and beg for help.
Sue Ellen Patchison is among 1 in 10 Torontonians relying on food banks to feed her family.
It did become a choice of medications and food, or paying the internet bill or food.
According to the annual Who's Hungry report, more than 2.5 million visits were made to Toronto food banks this year. That's a record high and 51% increase from the previous year.
We're adding 12,000 Torontonians to the registry of food banks every single month now, and the majority of those are people who are employed.
The report from the Daily Bread and North York Harvest Food Banks shows a 154% increase in new clients.
We're seeing skyrocketing housing costs. We're seeing rampant inflation. We're seeing stagnating wages and income supports that just aren't able to keep pace.
According to the report, the median monthly income of food bank clients is just over $1,100, well below Toronto's official poverty line of $2,300. Clients like Bridget Martin, who is on ODSP and says it's not enough amid the soaring cost of living.
Groceries and rent are the major ones, and the funny thing is our incomes have not increased.
Food banks project 3 million visits by the end of this year.
What we are doing today is not sustainable.
The executive director of North York Harvest Food Bank says the demand is putting a strain on community food banks that are exceeding capacity.
There's not enough space, there's not enough people, there's not enough resources to be able to accommodate that demand.
Food banks are advocating for immediate action from all levels of government, including increasing the affordable housing supply and income supports.
Can't continue to rely on food charity in order to make up for policy failures at different levels of government.
As the demand trends upwards, meeting that need, they say, is becoming increasingly difficult. Mike Walker, CTV News.
And our coverage continues online. You can read more from the Hunger Report and compare rental rates across the country on our website, ctvnewstoronto.ca.
And breaking news tonight, emergency crews are dealing with major flooding inside a condo building on Simcoe Street. We're told a pipe burst on the 12th floor. It has caused a significant leak and numerous floors below are affected. And you can see there are multiple crews on the scene dealing with this issue. Toronto Fire tells us the elevators are also out of service. This is a 35-story building, so obviously a very frustrating night for the people who live there. We'll continue to follow this developing story.
Also tonight, the hunt is on for a hit-and-run driver after a homeless man was fatally struck and dragged by a dark SUV that mounted a curb downtown. The latest from investigators in moments.
But first, a live look outside at the city skyline on this Tuesday evening. It was another bright, sunny afternoon, though it was a tad cooler than yesterday. Lindsay Morrison is here with a look at the current conditions. I don't think anyone's complaining.
I don't think so, Michelle. You know, we didn't make it to 14 degrees like we did yesterday, but if you were outside in the direct sunlight, it felt quite lovely out there. We had cloud cover early on. It has since cleared. We enjoyed a beautiful blue sky this afternoon. Still a little bit of cloud cover around and north of Lake Simcoe, as well as in through eastern sections of Ontario. The other difference today compared to yesterday, the winds much calmer today and also coming from a southerly direction, which is going to contribute to our warm up for tomorrow. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. But yes, single digits tonight around the Golden Horseshoe. It's 6 degrees right now in Toronto. We did make it to our forecast daytime high of 9. And overnight tonight, we are expecting to drop somewhere near about 2 degrees. That's overnight and into the early morning hours of tomorrow with just a few clouds out there. Back into double-digit territory tomorrow. We'll talk all about it coming up. For now, Michelle, I'll send it back to you.
Thank you, Lindsay. Well, we turn to the investigation into a terrible and tragic crash in downtown Toronto.
A homeless person sleeping on the sidewalk struck and killed in a hit and run this morning. CTV's Beth McDonnell has the latest from Scott and Wellington Street. Beth.
Nathan, I can tell you people in this neighborhood are shaken up about this collision. Some people told me they have seen people sleeping on this corner before. The hunt is on for the driver of this large black SUV, believed to be a Ford Expedition. Toronto police say it was traveling north on Scott Street, approaching Wellington Street East when it went on the curb and entered the east side of the sidewalk, hitting a man experiencing homelessness, sleeping on a grate. Officers say the man was dragged a short distance and died, with the driver taking off.
Kind of horrifying to think that somebody would hit somebody like that and just drive away.
I was sad. You know, it doesn't matter if he's a homeless or what he is, right?
The incident happened between 6:30 and 6:45 this morning. Officers brought in a collision reconstruction team, collected video, and spoke with witnesses. They're urging the driver to turn themselves in.
There's a possibility that the individual may not have known they drove over an individual. However, they did mount the curb. They were driving in a vehicle that caused the death of an individual.
Sad. Wow. Sometimes at night I'm here and I see people sleeping on the streets and on the corners.
This man is homeless and doesn't want to be identified. He is one of several people telling CTV News they've recently seen different people sleeping on the same southeast corner where the man was hit. In fact, police say they attended the corner with medics yesterday for a woman sleeping on a grate who refused assistance. This grate has warm air coming out of it and is next to another grate. There is no raised edge between either of them and the road.
Is there anything that could be done to improve the safety for people that are looking for warmth?
Warming centers, start opening them. I mean, there's no need, but there are people that are going to lay there anyway, unfortunately, and that's a mental health issue we have going on in this city.
Leading up to the corner, there are bollards which prevent traffic from entering the sidewalk, which is next to Bercy Park, but not at the corner itself. Meanwhile, the search for the black SUV and its driver continues. I reached out to the city for information about the design features at the corner, and it tells me it's working on a response. One recent change here is the traffic lights were activated here less than a month ago. Before that, the intersection was controlled with stop signs north-south on Scott Street, and there was free-flowing traffic on Wellington. The city activates warming centers when temperatures reach -5 degrees or when Environment Canada issues a warning for
for a winter event. Police say the black SUV is believed to have gone north on Colborne Street and then King Street. Tonight, police are not identifying the victim's name. Reporting live, I'm Beth McDonnell. Michelle, back to you.
Thank you, Beth. Meanwhile, a child was taken to hospital with serious but non-life-threatening injuries after they were struck by a vehicle outside a North York school this morning. It happened just after 8:30 near Sentinel and Derry Down roads. The driver involved remained at the scene.
A body has now been recovered 2 days after an explosion and fire at a Scarborough home. The blast Sunday leveled a home on Kitchener Road in the Kingston and Galloway area. Officials have not confirmed whether the remains found today belong to the homeowner. Investigators are continuing to search the debris to determine the cause of the explosion.
Meanwhile, a worker was injured after falling off the roof of a home under construction near St. Clair and Lafton Avenue. Paramedics say the worker was taken to hospital with life-threatening injuries, and officers remain on scene to investigate. The Ministry of Labor will eventually take over the investigation.
If you work in the hospitality industry, changes are on the way, intended to offer more protection on the job.
The province has introduced legislation for restaurant employees. CTV's Queen's Park Bureau Chief Siobhan Morris joins us live with those details. Siobhan.
Well, Michelle, it's been a rough few years to work in hospitality. There was, of course, the pandemic, and now we have new data showing that Ontarians are going out for dinner far less than they used to. The legislation introduced today, the government hopes will help hospitality workers keep more money in their pockets.
The government is serving up new protections for Ontarians working in restaurants, bars, and other hospitality spots. Though Restaurants Canada insists it's rare, some staff are still on the hook if patrons dine and dash. Now a promise to outlaw the practice. It can take time to master a new menu, but the Labour Minister wants to make sure training is compensated, something this man says his wife didn't get at a fast food place.
She got paid 2 days for training, and she went more than 2 weeks.
Proposed changes for hospitality workers include banning unpaid trial training shifts, more transparency around pooled tips, and giving workers choice about how they access their tips.
Most people are paying with plastic.
And so Richard Alexander with Restaurants Canada explains some employers have been funneling tips to staff through third parties.
These platforms have been charging and taking fees, which is taking away from what is supposed to be a direct gift.
Paige can bring it in.
The hospitality measures are part of a larger bill from the Labour Minister aimed at workers.
We recognize the challenges you're facing in inflationary times here in Ontario and across Canada.
The bill includes help to ease the transition of new Canadians into the workforce.
I think people are sick and tired of hearing that, their cabbie's a doctor or a nurse when they're struggling and waiting months for a healthcare procedure. So we're tackling that.
The bill proposes banning requiring work experience in Canada in a job posting, requiring employers to disclose if AI is used in hiring, and requiring salary ranges in job postings.
When I'm applying somewhere, I need to know how much I'm going to get paid, right?
Before deciding whether to put in the time and energy, the legislation would also allow more firefighters to qualify for WSIB benefits for esophageal cancer.
Today at Queen's Park, we saw the return of someone who hasn't been here in quite a while, Steve Clark, the former Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. He hasn't been around the halls of the Pink Palace since he resigned as minister over the Labor Day weekend. He didn't talk to reporters today, but of course we have many questions for him, including whether or not he's been approached by the RCMP for an interview as they investigate the land removal scheme done by the government. And we have questions about how he feels now knowing that the government has reversed itself on many items, including the Greenbelt redevelopment plan and a whole bunch of other things that Steve Clark led. We will see if he will show his face at Queen's Park tomorrow. Reporting live from Queen's Park, I'm Siobhan Morris. Nathan, back to you.
All right, thank you, Siobhan. And history was made at Queen's Park today as Ontario installed its new Lieutenant Governor.
Presenting the Lieutenant Governor of Ontario, the Honourable Edith Dumont.
Edith Dumont is now the 30th Lieutenant Governor of Ontario, serving as representative of King Charles III.
After dedicating nearly 40 years of my life to advancing the cause of education, to helping people achieve their full potential, I'm truly honored to be installed today as your 30th Lieutenant Governor, the 4th woman et la première francophone.
And the first francophone in the history of Ontario.
Dumont arrived at the steps of the legislature by horse-drawn carriage, along with her 2 daughters, and was greeted by various officials. Dumont succeeds Elizabeth Dowdeswell, who served for 9 years.
Coming up, he's seen the worst of this city in the business of catching killers. The man who led some of Toronto's most high-profile murder investigations is calling it a career. We catch up with Detective Sergeant Hank Idzinga as he prepares to embark on life's next chapter. The defense lawyer for the man accused of killing 4 members of a Muslim family in London, Ontario, insists his client is not guilty of the charges. The jury heard closing arguments today in the trial of 22-year-old Nathaniel Veltman. He faces 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of attempted murder. Prosecutors allege his actions amount to an act of terrorism. Defense lawyer Christopher Hicks says Veltman did not commit an act of terrorism and is not guilty of murder because he didn't have criminal intent to kill the victims and didn't deliberately plan the attack.
Toronto police have arrested and charged a man with second-degree murder and a deadly stabbing in Etobicoke. Police were called to a condo on Zora Street near Kipling and the Queensway at around 6 in the morning last Friday. A woman was found in a unit suffering from a stab wound. She died at the scene. 68-year-old Felice Passarelli, of no fixed address, has been charged in connection with the killing.
He's spent more than 3 decades working to keep the streets of Toronto safe.
Tonight, as Police Inspector Hank Idzinga prepares to retire, we're talking to the veteran officer about overseeing some of the city's most high-profile cases, including the arrest of a serial killer. CTV's Rahim Ladani reports.
It's nice not to have to get up at 4:15 in the morning.
Telephone calls in the middle of the night is one aspect of the job Detective Sergeant Hank Idzinga won't miss as he prepares to retire from the Toronto Police Service after 34 years.
I started in 14 Division in 1990, and I spent about 10 years there, and then I went to 51 Division.
Then in 2005, Idzinga joined homicide, a path he says was destined since childhood.
My grandfather was a murder victim. And so that really steered me towards wanting to do policing and, catch the bad guys. And in 1990, I was exposed to my first murder scene as a young constable.
Over the years, Idzinga has been at the forefront of countless GTA investigations. In 2009, there was the murder of Neriel Valdez in North Etobicoke.
I believe he was brought up there and the perpetrators planned and deliberately killed him there.
In 2010, he investigated Mark Moore, who murdered 4 people during a 75-day killing spree.
There's absolutely no rhyme or reason to why they were killed.
His career-defining case then came when Idzinga took on the role of major case manager in the investigation into serial killer Bruce McArthur. McArthur pleaded guilty in 2019 to murdering and dismembering 8 men and is spending life in prison.
You don't get the satisfaction out of the court processes. You get the satisfaction out of knowing that you've gotten answers for the family and loved ones of the victims.
Looking ahead, Idzinga believes investigative genetic genealogy will be crucial towards future policing.
You get that DNA sample from a crime scene and you're able to identify it with, instead of years, within days or weeks of the actual offense and being able to make that arrest.
As for his biggest accomplishment, it came last year when under his command, the homicide unit surpassed an 80% clearance rate, the highest in 2 decades.
I have no regrets and I'm grateful to have had such a long, successful career.
Idzinga's retirement will become official at the end of the year. However, he has already handed over the reins to Sergeant Terry Brown, who has taken over as the new acting unit commander. Rahim Ladani, CTV News.
A warning, this next story contains disturbing content. In the Middle East, Palestinian authorities are calling for a ceasefire to evacuate patients trapped inside Gaza's biggest hospital.
Israel has encircled the hospital where supplies are dwindling and there is no electricity. CTV's Heather Wright reports.
Trapped inside Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza City, people have now started burying bodies in a mass grave. The territory's largest hospital is no longer functioning, and more than 100 bodies have accumulated in the facility, posing a significant health risk to the thousands trapped inside. With fighting between Israeli forces and Hamas raging nearby, no one can safely leave. The facility has no power, and doctors say at least 5 people in the ICU died yesterday due to a lack of oxygen.
Every minute, every hour, we are hearing that either full hospital or departments in a hospital is closing its services.
Another hospital forced to shut down is Al Rantisi Children's Hospital. It was evacuated last week, and the hospital's director says several patients were left behind in the ICU. The hospital was besieged by tanks, Dr. Mustafa Al-Khalat says. Water, power, and oxygen were cut. Israel has long maintained that Hamas has bases set up within hospitals, and yesterday released video from beneath Al Rantisi showing weapons, ammunition, and evidence it says shows hostages were once held there. An estimated 240 hostages remain in Gaza. And more than 5 weeks after the horrific massacre carried out by Hamas, calls are growing louder for more to be done to secure their release.
We need them home now.
Israel confirmed today that at least one of the hostages, Noah Marciano, has been killed. Hamas released this video of her, followed by an image of her body. Hamas claims she was killed by an Israeli airstrike on November 9th, though this could not be independently verified. The IDF said today it has captured a number of Hamas sites in Gaza City and is in control of the city center, though fighting continues in the northern part of the enclave. Heather Wright, CTV News, Toronto.
There were more emotional reunions today as people returned from Gaza.
There is dangerous when you come from your location to the border. There is very dangerous to cross, but lucky. Some people, they got accident, but we are lucky we passed and reached the crossing border to Egypt, and everything was okay.
Amir and Suhar Youssef traveled to Gaza on October 2nd, just days before the war broke out. They were greeted by their son at Pearson Airport this morning.
It was a hard 1 month for us. It was supposed to be a vacation for my father to go see his mom and his parents, and his family members, but it turned the way it is, and they have a lot of family members here as well too, so we're so fortunate for them to come back.
The couple say they tried for 2 weeks to get through the Rafah border crossing and out of Gaza.
In Washington, another large pro-Israel demonstration and march was held today. Streets were closed around much of downtown amid heightened security. Thousands gathered on the National Mall to show solidarity with Israel. They also demanded the release of the hostages and condemned rising anti-Semitism. There have been protests and demonstrations around the world since the war began in support of both sides.
In England, a man's in custody in connection with the death of hockey player Adam Johnson. The former Pittsburgh Penguin was cut by a skate during a game last month. The Minnesota native was playing for the Nottingham Panthers at this time. South Yorkshire police have arrested a man on suspicion of manslaughter. They did not provide further details, but say they've been carrying out extensive inquiries to figure out what led to the tragedy.
Many parts of Canada were hit with unprecedented wildfires this year, and now a clearer picture of what happened in Quebec. The province's Forest Fire Prevention Agency says the area burned was greater than the previous 20 years combined. About 4.5 million hectares of land were scorched. Over 1 million of that was in the bottom half of the province, where most people live. But there were no deaths, loss of primary residences, or critical infrastructure destroyed.
In Iceland, residents of a town under threat from a potential volcanic eruption are allowed to return home briefly after being evacuated.
There was so much panic, so many earthquakes, just one person holding things while the other one was packing, and yeah, it was just a lot of panic, a lot of emotional distress.
Seismic activity and underground lava flows intensified in the region on the weekend. That activity is now decreased, but officials say the probability of an eruption remains high. Authorities are preparing to build walls around a geothermal power plant in hopes of protecting it from lava.
King Charles turned 75 today, but it was business as usual for the monarch. The king used his special day to officially launch the Coronation Food Project. It's part of his effort to try and stop people from going hungry and help cut the millions of tons of discarded food. The king is also hosting a reception in recognition of the work of nurses and midwives. It's part of events marking 75 years of the National Health Service. In Winnipeg, the Royal Canadian Mint revealed the image that will soon be on all our new coins.
When you look at the effigy, there's a sense of warmth, there's a sense of gentleness, sense of wisdom to it.
The work by Canadian portrait artist Stephen Rosati was chosen from among submissions by 350 artists. It was sent to Buckingham Palace for approval. A small amount of 2023 dated coins will circulate early next month. All Canadian coins in circulation with the image of the late Queen Elizabeth II will still be legal tender.
Coming up, nicotine pouches in the spotlight. Canadian health organizations sound the alarm, urging immediate action, fearing an array of flavors and legislative gap will lead to youth addiction.
And I'm Pat Foran. Coming up on Consumer Alert, the Israel-Hamas war has been underway for over a month now. Travel companies have been canceling and postponing trips in the region. Many people don't feel safe to go there, and they're trying to change their travel plans. I'll have my reports. That's just ahead.
We are looking at a seasonal night tonight, temperature-wise, close to 2 degrees in Toronto, slightly below freezing in Peterborough and Bancroft. Tomorrow, though, it's mild again. 12 is what we're forecasting here in Toronto. Not only that, but partly cloudy skies. Going to be a beautiful day to get outside, rake some leaves, or go for a stroll. Things do, however, change as we move closer to the weekend. We'll talk about that coming up. And stay with us. We've got another full night of great shows for you right here on CTV.
As the war between Israel and Hamas rages on in the Middle East, many travel companies are canceling or postponing trips there.
While canceled holidays pale in comparison to the suffering happening in the region, many Canadian travelers have been affected. Our Pat Foran has this story on Consumer Alert. Pat.
Thanks, Michelle. And Nathan, about 90,000 Canadians travel to Israel each year, many with plans to visit the Holy Land. Companies have canceled tours there, but other travel in the region is going ahead, even though some feel it's not safe to go.
Israel is at war with Hamas, and the situation remains tense with widespread destruction, violence, and casualties. Millions from around the world come to visit Israel's holy sites, something now on hold as visitors are being told to avoid all non-essential travel there.
And those poor people that are there on both sides are suffering terribly.
Wendy Fortune and her husband of Toronto planned a cruise that included stops in Israel, Turkey, Jordan, and Egypt. The cruise line canceled the Israel portion, but said the trip would go ahead. Fortune still plans to go, but has concerns.
Just give us the option of going on another cruise in a different part of the world.
I just didn't feel safe going so close to a war zone.
Bonnie Grossman and Morley Halberstadt of Toronto planned a trip to Egypt and Jordan, but decided not to go for safety reasons. They were unable to get a refund.
We just felt in the circumstances of the war being between Israel and the Hamas that we just didn't want to take those chances.
Trip cancellation insurance would provide refunds in most instances once travel advisories are issued.
If insurance isn't purchased, you're at the whim of the cruise company to either give you back all the monies, some of the monies, or a credit, or in these cases, nothing.
What's your level of risk that you're willing to take?
Travel expert Lauren Christie says people have to decide if they'll travel in a region close to a war zone or walk away from the money they paid for the trip.
Money aside, if you don't feel comfortable going on vacation and it's not going to be a pleasurable experience for you and you're going to, that's not vacation. And so you should do what's right for you.
As the war rages on, many tour groups continue to monitor the situation and alter, postpone, and cancel travel plans.
And several cruise lines are now canceling sailing to the Middle East for the rest of the year and into next year. Tour companies that operate in Egypt and Jordan are also canceling tours and seeing a drop in new bookings. On your side, I'm Pat Foran.
If you have a consumer story idea, email us at alert@ctv.ca.
We're in the middle of the month now, and you can pretty much get anything this time of year, but right now things are pretty good.
I can't believe we're going to ramp up to a few more double-digit days before we hit the weekend. This is spectacular.
And not only that, but it's quiet weather-wise. We don't have a whole lot of active weather scenarios, which is a little unusual for November. It's typically a pretty active month, complete with some gusty winds, heavy rain, sometimes snow as well. However, it is worth mentioning that temperatures are going to change as we make our way into this weekend. Weather is brought to you by Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train. Here's a look at our current satellite and radar. I just want to show you the cloud cover that has cleared out since this morning, almost like the curtains opening on the windows. We had beautiful sunshine earlier today. We'll have more of that tomorrow and the day after as well. It's Friday where things are going to change a little bit. We do have a disturbance that's going to swing through, complete with a cold front, so we will get a cool down and also some wet weather. And in some cases, maybe a little bit of light snow as well. So here's how that's all going to play out. About midday tomorrow, we've paused that there just to show you partly cloudy skies, followed by some clearing in the afternoon. Thursday looks to be similar. We might even be a degree warmer on Thursday, but overall quite pleasant. Mix of sun and cloud for the most part. Here's what happens on Friday. So when that cold front arrives, we are expecting rain for the most part for us around the city of Toronto. It's maybe going to be 5 to 10 millimeters, more so through the afternoon as opposed to the morning. Look what could happen at some higher elevation areas, Dundalk Highlands, for example. Maybe a little bit of wet snow mixing in, similar situation to the east of Georgian Bay. And then as that front continues to pass us in the lower Great Lakes, we will see the temperature drop. And as a result, there could be a little bit of mixing overnight and into early Saturday. We'll get to that again in just a moment. Temperature is dropping right now. It is 5 degrees in Toronto now. Of course, that happens after the sun sets. Tomorrow's high, 12. A reminder that our average daytime high this time of year is 7. So we are well above that. We're going to be at about 11 degrees in St. Thomas, 10 in Guelph, 12 degrees in Burlington, as well as Aurora, quite mild in Uxbridge as well. Huntsville here will be closer to about 8, but that too is warmer than normal for this time of year. Here's the 7-day forecast, so it's looking great for Wednesday and Thursday. We're still mild on Friday during the day. After that cold front passes, we are going to cool down at night. Keep the umbrella handy. For Saturday, Sunday, back to reality temperature-wise. We're looking at highs around 6 and 4 degrees, respectively. Chance of showers, slight chance of some mixing again overnight as the temperature drops to or slightly below the freezing mark. And it looks like this is going to be a bit more of our temperature pattern as we make our way into the early part of next week. Right now, conditions look dry for next Monday, Tuesday. That's the forecast for now. Nathan, over to you.
All right, thank you, Lindsay. Also tonight, protecting our most vulnerable. Masking mandates return to Ontario long-term care homes as COVID numbers and respiratory illnesses begin to rise. That's coming up.
A new nicotine product is now available in Canada, and it has some people worried.
They are nicotine pouches, and right now they can be purchased by anyone, including children. CTV's health reporter Pauline Chan has the details.
We have Berry Frost, Chill Mint, Tropic Breeze.
These are the products that have been approved for sale in Canada. Nicotine pouches that are a new product and so are not governed by existing laws limiting sales to children.
It beggars belief that Health Canada is introducing a product without these protective measures in place. It beggars belief that they introduced this without informing the provincial government so that they could ready their laws.
Several concerned groups, including Physicians for a Smoke-Free Canada, the Heart and Stroke Foundation, and the Canadian Cancer Society, are sending an urgent message to provincial health ministers.
We're not calling for a ban on these products. What we're calling for is a suspension of their sale until measures can be put in place to protect children in the nicotine market.
The coalition says the nicotine pouches, which do not contain tobacco, are clearly meant to appeal to young people, with ads promoting a fun lifestyle being shown on social media. But the company that makes the pouches says they are intended to help with smoking cessation.
We're selling this product like any other cessation product in Canada. We respect every rules and regulation. And we just feel we're singled out because we're a tobacco company.
The problem, say critics, is that convenience stores and other sales outlets are not known for actively limiting sales to minors, and they fear a new generation of Canadians addicted to nicotine may be growing if action isn't taken soon. Pauline Chan, CTV News.
Masking requirements have returned for long-term care staff in Ontario as COVID-19 cases rise. The new rules went into effect on November 7th and impact staff, volunteers, and support workers. They now have to wear masks indoors in all resident areas. The directive says it's strongly recommended that caregivers and visitors also wear masks inside, except when in a resident's room or when eating or drinking. Infectious diseases specialist Dr. Isaac Bogosh says the move is appropriate.
I don't have a crystal ball, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see this moving forward year after year, especially during times where there's more virus circulating. And again, these are easy steps that we can take to protect the most vulnerable among us. It makes total sense to do it.
New data shows there was a significant increase in the number of respiratory virus outbreaks over September and October in long-term care.
3 people are now facing charges after protesters interrupted last night's Giller Prize ceremony.
Okay. Currently has a $500 million stake in outlets.
Video shared by the Palestinian Youth Movement shows 2 people standing on stage denouncing Scotiabank's investment in an Israeli arms firm. Scotiabank sponsors the Giller Prize, which recognizes the best in Canadian literature. Later, another demonstrator caused a disruption when Sarah Bernstein was announced as the Giller Prize winner. 2 25-year-olds and a 23-year-old have been charged in connection with the incidents.
Production has resumed on the 3rd season of the hit HBO series, The White Lotus.
Welcome to The White Lotus.
Casting began for the 3rd season on November 9th, and that's the day after the SAG-AFTRA actors strike ended. Filming is tentatively set to begin early February in Thailand. The 3rd season of The White Lotus is expected to be released in 2025.
A new play is set to open tomorrow night in Toronto, and it's called Letters from Max, a Ritual.
And while it's an emotional production, the actors say that doesn't mean it's sad. But as CTV's Andrea Case reports, it does promise all the feels.
It was a surprise to Minnesota-born actor Jesse Livercombe that acting would be his vocation.
I just wanted to be around theater people. I think I was drawn to that community. I grew up with a real severe stutter. I was avoiding using the phone. So it was a pretty strange shift when I was 12 or 13.
He says he still has the stutter, but you wouldn't know it from his performance as Max in the new play, Letters from Max, a Ritual.
I'm clinging more and more to my writing as my panic is increasing.
Based on the friendship through correspondence between Max Ritvo, a student diagnosed with cancer, and his professor, Canadian playwright Sarah Rule.
If nothing else, maybe we'll squeeze a great play out of whatever comes of this. Gratefully, Max.
The letters were turned into an award-winning book by the duo and now a play. Award-winning actress Mav Beatty plays Rule.
You actually hear her own voice from her own self. It's also intimidating and nerve-wracking, but it's a huge gift for an actor.
It feels like a new challenge for me as an actor, which is exciting and super scary to do in front of a bunch of people. But I think I'm excited about it.
When asked if this is a good play for this time,
I think,
Beatty becomes emotional.
It's a time where we are trying to find connection, and sometimes you can't do that in person. Sometimes you have to do it just with words, with poetry, with your thoughts, and then you're hoping that those words are going to touch, hug, comfort, let the other person know that you are not alone.
Necessary Angel Theatre production of Letters from Max, a Ritual opens on Wednesday at the Theatre Centre on Queen Street West. Andrea Case, CTV News.
After the break, gearing up for the Grey Cup. They may be rival coaches, but they share mutual admiration, teeing up the big game in the Hammer. The countdown is on.
I was previously renting a condo, so I actually left because the price was increasing.
Updating our top stories, sky-high rental costs in Toronto. Today, the federal government announcing $1.2 billion in loans for 7 new projects, 2,600 new rental units across the city.
We're adding 12,000 Torontonians to the registry of food banks every single month now, and the majority of those are people who are employed.
The Daily Bread Food Bank says there were more than 2.5 million visits to food banks in the city this year. That record high is a 51% increase from last year. Officials blame the cost of housing, food, inflation, and stagnant wages.
He got paid 2 days for training, and he went more than 2 weeks.
The province is planning changes to protect hospitality workers. It includes banning unpaid trial training shifts, more transparency around pooled tips, and giving workers choice about how they access their tips.
On the markets, the Canadian dollar fell 1 point to settle at $73.02 U.S. American benchmark oil slid 2 cents to 78.17 a barrel. And the TSX Composite Index gained 314 points to end the day at 20,023.
Manulife Financial has cut 250 jobs globally. It impacts about 2.5% of the total number of staff in the company's wealth and asset management unit. The move comes as some Canadian financial companies are struggling amid high costs and a slowing economy. But the insurer reported better than expected earnings for the third quarter earlier this month.
They used to be on the same team, but are now on opposite sides of the field. The head coaches for this weekend's Grey Cup game spoke today, expressing mutual admiration.
You look at the work ethic it takes as a player to play as long as he did, and you see it as a coach right away, the professionalism he takes each and every day, the dedication to his craft. But Osha's a great person, and you only get to see that when you're around him every single day.
Playing against Jay, obviously, you know how competitive he is, but then when you're in the same building and you decide to work out with him, you get schooled every single day in every single exercise we would ever do. And so you see how competitive, how fiery he was. And then after that, I was going home, but he was still going back to work and staying until all hours.
O'Shea's Winnipeg Blue Bombers hit the practice field this afternoon in preparation for their first championship showdown against Montreal. Kickoff for Sunday's big game in Hamilton is set for 6 o'clock.
The Maple Leafs have arrived in Sweden for the NHL's Global Series. Toronto set to play the Detroit Red Wings on Friday afternoon. They'll have Saturday off before taking on the Minnesota Wild on Sunday morning. Both games will be played in Stockholm. The Leafs are coming off back-to-back wins over the Calgary Flames and Vancouver Canucks and are looking at a long road trip. They won't play a game in Toronto for the next 2 weeks.
He's attacking. Shot good!
It was a dramatic finish for the Raptors against the Washington Wizards last night. The team trailed by 19 points at the half, but managed to mount a comeback and secure a 111-107 win. The Raptors will take on the Milwaukee Bucks tomorrow. Just ahead, breaking the ice. The Professional Women's Hockey League unveils its team uniforms as players gear up for the season. A look at Toronto's newest sports team after the break.
Tonight, new Canadian research into concussions.
We're hoping to take our discoveries and bring it to the lives of people to get them living the best lives they can.
The hope for those living with serious head injuries later on CTV National News.
It's the newest competition set to heat up the ice.
Puck drops on the first season of the Professional Women's Hockey League in January. But tonight we're getting a peek at how the players will look when they first face off. CTV's Charlie Thong reports.
It's a professional league, it's best on best, and so to be able to play with and against the best players at any given time is always a pretty exciting prospect.
It's media day as the Professional Women's Hockey League is opening training camps for their inaugural season. 6 new teams of the most talented players in the world.
Minnesota selects Taylor Heisey.
Taylor Heisey, who was taken as the league's first overall draft pick back in September, says she looks forward to learning more about her new teammates.
On the ice, you don't really know kind of who they are and what they do. So I think for this to have everyone here, to have everyone's schedules line up for once and have us all here and to be able to do this is awesome.
The league will be comprised of teams in Toronto, Montreal, Ottawa, Boston, Minnesota, and New York. and it comes on the heels of the Premier Hockey Federation, which featured the Toronto Six, but this league includes members of the Professional Women's Hockey Players Association, meaning the best are all here.
I think, for a long time, a lot of us we've been itching for that team feel and being a part of a team for a whole season and not just coming together on the weekends.
While players will be coming from Canada, the U.S., and Europe, for many Canadian and American players, it means becoming teammates with those who have been on the other side of hockey's biggest rivalry.
It'll be awesome to play with those Americans as well as keep playing against them. But yeah, I think it's just going to keep getting more and more competitive as the league continues to grow.
This season, teams will have 24 regular season games plus playoffs. Team colors have been released, but names have yet to be announced.
Rain would be cool for us, REIGN. The purple rain because, just makes sense in Minnesota. But anything really, I just kind of want to play hockey at this point.
While teams have announced their practice facilities, it's not yet known where regular season games will be played when the puck drops in January 2024. Sean Leathong, CTV News.
I am looking forward to watching some of those games.
Me too. Gosh, young girls getting to look up to those teams. Amazing weather too for this point in the month.
I think so. Tomorrow's looking like a great day. We're going to start off with a mix of sun and cloud. It's going to be pleasant for venturing off to school. Here's a look at your wake-up weather. School bus edition. So that's around 8 a.m. Temperature will be around 6 degrees. So kids, you'll want to bundle up. But I know you're probably going to want to get rid of the jacket in the afternoon. About 12 degrees is what we're forecasting by home time. And again, mainly sunny skies. There's one more look at the 7-day forecast. We need raincoats and rubber boots come Friday. Nathan and Michelle.
All right. Thank you, Lindsay. Be sure to join Heather Butts tonight at 11 for CTV National News, followed by Zarada Allman with our next local newscast at 11:30.
In the meantime, our coverage continues anytime on CP24 and online at ctvnewstoronto.ca.
For Lindsay Morrison and all of us at CTV News, thank you for watching and have a good night.